WhiteOps is a cybersecurity company. I run a company of white hat hackers. And our mission is to make it less profitable to break into people's computers. There's been a lot of attention over the past several decades in trying to make computers harder to break into. And our idea was to make them less profitable to break into, so there's less of an incentive in the first place. And we're particularly focused on what we call mass exploitation, which is the compromise of lots of ordinary people's computers. So we don't pay attention to the particular methods by which governments are getting compromised, or even usually very large businesses, but rather what are the attacks that are working against ordinary people, and why? How are the hackers that are doing that making money? And that led us to ad fraud, which turns out to be one of the absolutely best ways to make money if you command a robot army of regular consumers, because all of us are also consumers, which means that we're targetable, high-value website visitors to someone. And if you can install malware on our computers, then you can make our computers visit websites, and people will pay good money for that. It's a huge study with 49 major advertisers in coordination with the ANA, the Association of National Advertisers. And to participate, the advertisers added our malware detection code into their advertising buys for a 2-month period. So we got our code running all over the internet through different kinds of buying channels, different kinds of digital advertising, to identify where our study participants' ads were actually being served to robots instead of real people. And when we talk about being served to robots, we mean being served to malware running in the background of ordinary people's computers. And those people have no idea that they've been compromised by a virus that's actually doing ad fraud. And the first objective of the study was to just size the problem. We had run a study a year ago estimating the economic impact to advertisers globally. And we wanted to see, is the problem smaller? Is it bigger? Did it stay the same? What we found is that the scope of the problem is about the same. The exposure as a percentage of all advertising had remained unchanged.
Which is about?
It was a $7.3 billion impact. So when you look across all digital advertising, especially brand advertising, so in display, in mobile, and in video, we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar impact, which means that these botnets are actually compromising advertisers all over the place. A year after first kind of raising the flag and sounding the alarm here, we didn't see a big difference in the global battlefield. However, we did find some big areas of improvement across the internet. So that was great. The reason why we're not winning the war across the board is that for every part of the internet that's cleaned up, or every advertiser who's reduced their bot exposure, some other parts of the net have just gotten that much dirtier. So in the aggregate, there was no change. But we can learn lessons from the places where we saw improvements. And what's most exciting to me is the premium segment of this marketplace really competing on quality, taking a stand and saying, I think that you should give me your ad dollars because we're going to husband them better and show them to a higher caliber of quality than everywhere else. And I'm a big believer in the market mechanics that can emerge when true competition on quality is possible. The reason we didn't have it, the reason why this is a $7 billion problem, is that the cyber criminals that we're up against are fantastic at mimicry. They're fantastic at making fake traffic look good. So what that really means is that previously, there was no way to do kind of quality differentiation between authentic human experiences and fake robot ones. Now that there are more sophisticated measures to tell the difference, now we're seeing emerging competition on that front, where the higher quality providers are saying so. And I think that ultimately is going to lead us to victory, because victory in this case is actually economic victory. The reason why the botnet operators are into this is because it makes so much money. If we start shrinking those profits, it's going to be a less attractive crime, and that's going to have cascading effects throughout the whole underground, the criminal underground, that may not cause black hat hackers to go get legit day jobs, but at least they'll switch to some other form of crime. The first victim of this crime are regular consumers, because it's their computers that are getting broken into and turned into the zombie army that inflates web views. When a botnet operator has infected a large number of computers, the way he turns that into money is by selling website visits to websites that want to serve ads every time they get a new visitor. So there's a direct economic incentive for publishers large and small to pay to increase the size of their audience. And if they cast too wide of a net, then they'll be paying for a bot audience in addition to, or perhaps even in substitution for, real humans. And the bots that visit a website when you buy traffic in this way, they look like real human visitors because the bots are just a variety of malware built out of regular browsers. So this is an extra browser process running in the background of these victim machines. Nobody knows it. And when they visit a website, they look like authentic users. And they may even have the real cookies, device IDs, other identifiers associated with the real people who own that computer. So from an ad analytics perspective, everything checks out clean. This has led to an explosion in demand for this kind of purchased traffic. Any botnet operator who can produce fresh infections of ordinary people's computers that look good to analytics companies can start selling visits across the board to many, many customers. And from the perspective of the sell side of the ad ecosystem, from publishers or from platforms, these robot visits are mixing in with regular people's visits to web properties across the internet. So taking on the problem means identifying those websites that are purchasing traffic on the side, getting these extra visitors, and identifying the difference between the real human visitors and the robot visitors throughout the ecosystem, wherever they may end up. And they might end up on some website you've never heard of that's just built for fraud and is victimizing some ad network or exchange. And then perhaps an even bigger problem is when the bots end up at websites that you would recognize, mid-tier, sometimes very, very, very large companies that are inadvertently getting bots as part of their audience reach practices. And in that case, they're inflating their sellable inventory. And sometimes that sellable inventory can be sold at a very, very high CPM. In this ultimately game of arbitrage where the money is flowing from publishers through various aggregation systems to websites who are themselves paying for an audience to someone who might actually be aggregating a whole bunch of audience sources, several of which are really front companies for botnets. So that 7 billion ultimately makes its way through the ecosystem from the advertiser through what could be several different middlemen before finally exiting the system to the true criminal operators.